Being in the ICOC cult is much like being a Hebrew slave under Egyptian bondage. The Egyptians, or leaders in the cult, whip the slaves into submission. Each slave is looked after like a hawk, micromanaged, with a discipler ready to crack the whip across any slave that falls out of line. A cult member cannot disobey, or else they will be whipped even harder, or kicked out of the cult, which is considered spiritual death by the cult, since they alone hold the keys to death and hell, with their ideology and equation salvation. As the pyramids were built on the backs of sweaty, hard-working Hebrew slaves, so is the ICOC cult built on the backs of mentally, spiritually, and emotionally manipulated slaves, held captive by the powers that be. The pharaoh, known as Kip McKean, answered to no one. And whenever a pharaoh died, or the leader of a cult was kicked out of their own cult, other leaders would take their place, perpetuating the cult practices, no matter what quote-unquote changes were made. All the slave masters, or leaders, would put heavy loads on the backs of the Hebrew slaves, or cult members, even when they could not bear the crushing weight. The heavy yokes of salvation by grace plus works, which is not grace at all, but becomes a predicament that no slave can overcome, no matter how hard they strive. Then the slave masters beat the slaves as they are falling from the weight of their load, their burnout, their imperfect obedience, their humanity, their lost cause, their endless pursuit of perfection that will never occur. The pyramid scheme worked to a degree, as we see the pyramids built by slaves under the whip, but the huge structures, all the effort, did nothing to save the Egyptian slave masters from a reckoning. The plagues came, and many slaves escaped the abusive Egyptian bondage. Unfortunately, the ICOC still continues, although many slaves have escaped, and are still escaping. The whole thing should have been done away with, but the controllers and remaining slaves are stuck in the Stockholm syndrome of boiling water, waving the shiny candy of supposed changes, with a trapdoor of false doctrines still underfoot. Meanwhile, the ICC has started the Hebrew slavery afresh, replete with whips and pyramids to be built by human effort.